So it's really funny making this video after my Spotify video for two reasons, being that I said I would not do a video like this ever again, being an album that I've listened to or albums I've listened to this month, and yet now I'm doing it just about, I don't know, a week later. And the second thing as well is that this album that I want to talk about probably could have made it into my Spotify Wrapped from how much I have been listening to it. I think that this might actually be on track to being listened to more than even that one Health album that kind of became a recurring joke in that video. This album, though, I am only going to talk about the sound of it, and the reason why is because the lyrics, I don't listen to lyrics the first time I listen to music. I listen to the sound. However, if the sound is good, I will listen back through and try to pay attention to the lyrics and try to make sense of it. And that's because if the album sounds good, then it is worth a re-listen. It is worth several re-listens, and this album very much is worth that. So, because of that, and another thing as well that I want to say is the sound of this album was so good and so, ear-catching for me that by the third or fourth track, I was already sold on it, but especially by the sixth track, it might as well have been signed, sealed, delivered. Second thing, the name of this album is Monarch of Monsters by Violet Pony. You will know that you have the right album because of the album artwork. I don't need to say anything else. And I won't be showing the album artwork for pretty obvious reasons, even if the original artist, she shows the album artwork in her full album stream of the album on her YouTube channel. The reason why is because I don't really want some weird community guidelines thing in the future. Yeah, I don't know if, I don't know how this falls within guidelines or not, because I don't care enough to look into it, and I don't want to worry about that. Instead, I'll use either this artwork that is official artwork to the album, or I'll use this Photoshop thing to refer to it if I need to show it again. But yeah, that's why I'm not going to show the album artwork. But I do have to talk about the album artwork just a little bit, because it is the first thing that you see. And it is definitely a choice for an album cover. And while I am not sold on how furry it is, the color choice and composition, very well done. Arguably, it's even fairly tasteful in what it's showing. And I'll also add that the artwork is actually very relevant to the themes of this album. So it all ends up making sense, but you don't get that when you just see the album cover recommended to you by Spotify, first thing that you open on your phone to, basically. Because, yeah, that was basically what happened for me, is I think it was one morning I woke up and just, opened up Spotify to put some music on, and right on my front page was this album. And I screenshotted this because I thought it was kind of funny that Spotify decided that out of all of my music listening, they're like, oh yeah, this person is going to want this furry album. And the thing is yes, I actually do want this album because this album is incredible. So, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the themes really, as I said before. I'm just going to talk about the sound because the sound is so good. There is a lot of variety to this, and in fact, right now, I will just play 1 second of each song. Yeah, there's a good amount of variety to this album. Now, I think I can generally describe this as basically being somewhat industrial. There's a lot of parallels that can be made with this album to, Nine Inch Nails. For instance, The Heretic actually reminds me of some moments from The Fragile. In particular, it reminds me of the song With Teeth from the album of the same name. So yeah, kind of like that late 90s, early 2000s 9 Inch Nails. That's kind of what it sounds like. And really as well, Play Dead could also be from like that era as well. But then there's also other songs that really start to get into prog rock. That was really when this album just, like, I fell in love with the album, because it also does this super fucking well, especially once you get to the Wallflower Equation, and especially once you get to Sludge. The thing is that this album starts off with this one song that it feels so familiar to me, and I can't quite pinpoint why, because it does feel like it feels like a song that I would have heard so many years ago now. Like, I would have heard it maybe right at the turn of 2010. So there is like a tiny bit of a nostalgic quality to it because of that, because it is such a familiar sound that it feels like something that I would have heard on pop radio, funny enough. Even though it is just different enough that it wouldn't be that. And I think that ends up working in this album's favor because of what the whole general idea of this album is, just from me kind of looking at it and trying to make sense of it. Again, not going to go too deep into that because I still don't have my fully formed opinions on that. But the most approachable songs for this album, though, would be the starting track, Pest, going all the way through Vitality Glitch, which is the fifth track on the album. Where it's really funny where these first 5 songs, okay, yeah, these could be songs that anyone would probably be able to get into, other than the fact that they are basically like industrial rock. It's really then once you get to the Wallflower Equation where you reach the second half of this album where everything sort of changes and has a really different mood to it. Granted, that really does begin to happen with Vitality Glitch, but it's definitely by Wallflower Equation where now you've crossed the border. And it's at this moment that I was sold on this album. Like I said, signed, sealed, delivered. That is when this happened, was with the Wallflower Equation. And even with its following song, Princess Cuckoo, the thing is that this then ends up feeling like a Shoo Shoo song. In fact, it kind of feels like a song, or a mixture of songs, from Girl with Basket of Fruit. I'll talk about that in a moment, but that's why I'm saying that the whole sound, the range of the sound in this album is really wide. And especially in the context of this song, you have like a spoken word thing and like this performance that you could see her like on stage performing this as if it's like poetry, basically. That's kind of the image that I'm getting.
Every shadow shouts like I've done something wrong, as the fire in my room splits me in two.
And then the second half of the song, it like returns back to being rock music. Yeah, and then another thing where it changes again is, and I'm skipping over Sludge for a moment because that's a song that I really have to get into. You then have Revenge Fantasy and Huntress that sort of bring back the electronic stuff from earlier. In fact, Revenge Fantasy kind of reminded me of Pink Maggot from White Pony, not to be confused with the name of the artist.
Not the same mind. What would they say?
And then you have Huntress, that is another departure in sound, that then builds directly into And As Her Howl. It's a really long title, which then brings about the catharsis, the cathartic release of this album. And then Rest Now is basically a reprisal of the opening track.
And I know that you're still me, so listen when I say.
Right, so now that I've just done a quick overview of the tracks, that way you can understand the fucking enormous range of music we're talking about, let's actually start getting into some details. So, yeah, as I said, the first couple of songs are very approachable and could probably fit on almost like any heavier playlist that you would have. It really is, though, and it's with these songs that I think really grab your attention on the album and get you interested, like, oh, okay, we're on this ride, and yeah, it's a really pleasant ride. But the shocker doesn't happen until you get to the Wallflower Equation, and it's the Wallflower Equation that serves as this bridge between the electronic sound and the rock sound, especially the rock sound that you will get later on Sludge, because it starts off with like this arpeggio sound that plays out throughout most of the music, and it feels like that you're kind of just flying through the air as shit is going on. And then it ends up building into these heavier guitar parts, and there's even a section of this song that pretty much combines jazz, because why not? And it is wonderful for that. There's this one like saxophone section that's doubled up, but it's basically a sax solo that's playing. That's the fact that you have this section of the song that is just reserved for a saxophone solo that pretty much just becomes this jam session for a couple minutes. Fucking awesome. I love that. I am a sucker for that. Because that's the kind of shit that I really enjoy off of like Francis the Mute, especially on Cassandra Gemini, where and even on like Pink Floyd Animals, especially with live versions of that album, where I love it when the band just goes into a jam session. That's the feeling that this particular section of the song has. I love it for that. I'll say that with the Mars Volta comparison as well, it is this song that then ends with this like extended acoustic section that is just centered around the acoustic guitar. And I'll say this, with this particular song, it does feel like there should be one final explosion of sound with it. But I suppose that's kind of still offered with the following song. But yeah, this is a 12-minute song, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Wallflower Equation is 12 minutes long. Easily the longest song on the album, if it wasn't for Sludge. Yeah, 22 minutes is this song. And the thing is that when I clicked on the album, because I actually did listen to the album on YouTube instead of on Spotify, and I just remembered something funny. The album starts with and this isn't on the Spotify version, this is just on the YouTube version. It starts with a content warning, which, I'll be honest, I have never had that with music.
This production is intended for mature listeners, and many audience members may find its content disturbing.
And I don't really know what to think about it, because on one hand, it's actually thematically appropriate with the album. It actually is. But I also don't think you necessarily need that for an album. I feel like an album, it should surprise you. And I always feel like a content warning does take away some of the surprise. Now, it doesn't give you great detail of what it is, even though the content warning actually is kind of detailed, weirdly. It doesn't give away the whole album, it doesn't really spoil it necessarily, but it's still kind of like, oh, okay, so you are telling me what to expect from the album. And I do suppose that ends up, like, I don't know. It's just a thing that I've thought about. I have thoughts about that as well because of like content warnings on video games. Like if you boot up a game and then it tells you, yeah, this game's about like depression. Good luck. It just seems weird. That's just a me thing, really. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. So I was watching I was listening to this on YouTube with the full album stream, and I noticed that, oh, this album's 85 minutes long. Okay, that's pretty long for an album, but you know, I've listened to Pink Floyd The Wall, and that's one of my favorite albums. No, actually, that is my favorite album of all time. And so I decided I'd give it a listen. If it was 2 hours, that might be a bit long, but yeah, 85 minutes, that's fine. And I didn't realize it was because you had a 22-minute prog rock epic on this album. I didn't notice that until, like, I hovered over the bar on YouTube, and there was a section that was, like, a tenth of the fucking thing. I thought, hold on, I guess a fifth, actually. It was like a fifth of the whole duration. No, sorry, a quarter. I can't do math right now. Yeah, it was like 25% of the whole bar, and I thought, what the fuck? Because I thought that YouTube had fucked up where I forgot to, like, chapter mark a song. No. The song is long, and Violet Pony does an interesting thing with this song in the description, because I didn't notice this until afterwards. Not only is this song actually broken up into parts, I respect that, because a lot of prog rock songs do that. Think about, like, Close to the Edge. It's a song that's in 3 parts. Tarkus, I think it is 8 parts, if I remember off the top of my head. Shine On You Crazy Diamond, 9 parts. It's not, that's actually... In a funny way, that's like a staple of a prog rock song is, yeah, it is so epic of a song. We have to break up into parts. It's 13 parts. Which means that every part averages out to like a minute and a half, roughly? Yeah, which is interesting. In a way, it's almost like if you called the Great Medley off of Abbey Road a song, because it's a bunch of these like smaller songs that are strung together. Even though like I feel like with the Great Medley or the Grand Medley, it's not quite a prog rock song. It's just all these ideas that have been strung together because they were all created by the different Beatles. But with Sludge, it's really difficult to actually like pick out each part. And I did try this, and it starts off pretty easy because you have a section that is called The River Runs Red. Oh, I wonder what part of the song that could be. By the way, such a hypnotic part of the song. I'm saying all this, and it sounds like that I don't like this song. No, this song is fucking incredible. I took some notes, and this is what I've been reading off of the whole video, but I'm just going to read straight off of the notes that I have for Sludge. Holy shit. Apparently, this is in 13... Okay, I've already said that. From the start, everything is nearly perfect for this type of song. The repeating bass line, the repeating guitar arpeggio, the repeating phrases, the rivers run red. This gets you into a hypnotic trance. It is so spiritual, it feels like this incantation being cast on the listener. That's one note. Next note. After the rivers run red, this strip feels like some 10,000 Days era Tool. And then there's a fucking church organ that reveals a world of desolation. Yeah, for a brief moment, it's like everything kind of airs out. You can hear the reverb a little bit, but it feels so alone as well. It feels like you're in a wasteland. And then there's this back and forth between Violet singing, strumming an acoustic guitar, that's then broken up by this wall of noise.
Make it stick.
Then she screams and it transitions into the next part of the song. And now, at this point, you're only 10 minutes into the album, or sorry, into the song. A minute later, you then have this transition that feels like it's from a Porcupine Tree song. I just have this note on here that says fantastic tone on that solo. I don't know when exactly that is, but yeah, there's a guitar solo that's in here that sounds incredible. And then there's another one at about 12:50 where you have this climb that she does in the solo, and this is just so satisfying to hear. And then basically what I'm saying is this song is if you took like Swans and then combined it with Porcupine Tree. That's pretty much what you end up with this song, and also with like a little bit of Tool, a little bit. There is so much going on here, and it is kind of overwhelming for me, simply because so many things are being done right. It feels like throughout this whole album, where it feels like someone looked at my Spotify and said, I'm going to make an album based off of just random songs off of this. Because it is wild to me how, like, perfect this album is in matching my tastes in music. And that is why I wanted to make this video talking about this album. Because this isn't something that I think has necessarily happened before. Obviously, you know, you have albums that will stick with you and become your favorite albums. You have albums that do that, but I can't think of an album I've listened to before that feels like it hits just the right notes on like genres of music I like, and as well as such different genres of music as well as industrial rock, 9 Inch Nails, jazz, the Mars Volta, which is fusing rock and jazz together, Tool, as I mentioned before, Pink Floyd. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And it is just incredible because of that. Like, honestly, the only thing this is kind of missing, and I don't think that it needed this, so don't take it as that, but the only thing that this could be missing is something that kind of sounds like video game music, I guess. Like NES, SNES. Yeah, I don't think that's really necessary. Yeah, this album is incredible because it is a very well-made album. This album sounds so good. The performance on this album is very good. Violet's singing, really good as well. Her voice is very pleasant to listen to. But it is just then a second level when so many moments of the album just perfectly scratch my interest in music and what I listen to. Okay, so funny thing, I already finished recording, but then I started talking more about this album, so I don't know where the fuck I'm going to cut this into the video. But I started talking about what my favorite song was, and then I got lost in doing that, so I'm going to try and just talk about some new stuff right now. I think that the best song off this album could be either the Wallflower Equation or Sludge. And the reason why is because, well, first off, I've added 2/3 of this whole album onto my Spotify. Because of that, it's difficult to narrow it down to one song. But because of the wide range of sound on this album, I think that the best overall song probably is the Wallflower Equation. But the best, like, somewhat pop song or like a more approachable song could probably be Play Dead. Either that or Pest. Pest is a really good opener, actually, especially with the context of the closing song. Actually, if you think about it, you want to know how prog this album is? It has a song that bookends the album like it's a Pink Floyd album. But yeah, the Wallflower Equation, though, I wanted to talk about this a little bit more because this particular song has something going on with it that I didn't even touch on in this video, and this is part of why I think makes it such a good song. Is this song in particular, I can really see it being performed on stage. And that's what I didn't really fully explain with my comments about, like, the jam session, where, no, the reason why I'm seeing the jam session is because I can see a live version of this song. I can see that being such an awesome fucking experience to witness and be part of. Yeah, I think that is, you know what, yeah. Because I was going to try and argue this against Sludge, because both of those songs have been, like, going at each other for me when it comes to what the best song in this album is. But no, I think Wallflower Equation is the best song because of that. And yeah, you can, like, I can kind of see Sludge as well on the stage. And I also could see Princess Cuckoo, as I said before, with the, like, poetry reading thing that I could visualize. But no, Wallflower Equation has so much energy in it that is perfect. Fucking perfect for a live performance. Yeah, okay, here's the end of the video. Okay, so I have one more thing I want to talk about, and this might take a while to explain because this is really nitpicky, but it is something that has bothered me with this album in particular. So the album has a very abrupt ending, okay? And I will go ahead and play it for you right now. I have to play it with some context, that way you can see what I mean by how it's really abrupt. And then that's just where it ends. Now, here's the thing. This abruptness is amplified if you're listening to this on Spotify and you have looping enabled, which it just so happens that is the case for me. Otherwise, if you don't loop it, it then just starts playing another song. So no matter what, you will have this happen, even if it isn't necessarily the beginning of the album. But I'll start it again. So the problem that I have here, because there are a few, but the biggest one that I have, that to me is maybe more of a preference thing, is that there isn't really enough time to process that the album is over. I feel like that, and look at where the marker is roughly, this is about where I would realize on the first listen, like, oh wait, the album's done. Unless I was listening on YouTube like I was the first time. And so, because of that, I feel like that there should be a pause between a pause at the end of just silence. And the reason for that is because you have 85 minutes of an album where you're just listening through the whole thing, and it's a really loud album as well, as I've talked about at length in this video. So having at the end what is a really like abrupt ending, you know, this, and then it going straight to silence, and then also now that's also the end of the album, I think it would be stronger to actually have like a cooked in 5 seconds of silence at the end of the track. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. Here you go. Here's the ending. Now, then if you have looping enabled, or if you have another song, then you hear the song afterwards. And why I'm going for 5 seconds, by the way, roughly, is because the basically the 8-measure loop that makes up the ending of this song is about 10 seconds long. So it would be about 4 measures of silence and then start back at the beginning. Now, here's the thing. I also want to talk about something really cool that I picked up with this song while looking at its waveform. Because I've obviously, with me making this video, I've had to look at the waveform at some point. And I noticed it gets really quiet and then gets really loud. So this made me immediately think, yo, there's some stupid shit happening outside my window. Fuck yeah. The thing that this immediately made me think of is She's So Heavy by the Beatles. Yes, I'm saying that Violet Pony pulled a John Lennon. Because what you have in that song is you have an A section and a B section. The A section would be the guitar arpeggio that we all know. And what happens is it goes back and forth a little bit, and then it just settles on the A section and plays that out until the end of the song. But what happens during that time is shit gets progressively louder, noisier, and more distorted. Where by the end you have just like all this wind around you, and then silence. And that's pretty much what this song is doing as well. And it's a very effective way of doing it, because it's just, you know, it's just crescendo, really. But I think especially with how loud this album is, this makes perfect sense to have this song get really loud and then finally just be silent. But that silence doesn't exist really in the song, because the song just ends as soon as the wolf howl is heard. And yes, this song does do the same thing, because if I play, like, back here, okay? Listen to this.
Like the dust that settles all around us.
If you were paying attention to the guitar chords, you could hear it go between 2 different chords. Okay? Now, if I go to even at its noisiest, listen, and you're gonna have to listen very closely. Now, even this part right here, by the way, this does come up earlier in the song, right here. Because functionally, it's just the bridge to then loop back at the beginning of the section. So that's another part of how this feels incomplete, because it just completes the cycle, but this particular section here immediately wants to go back into the main cycle, the main 8-measure cycle. Yeah, it's a very specific nitpick that I have with this, is just wanting some silence at the end of the album, because I think that would be a really good feature given how loud the album is. And as well, that's also what happens with Abbey Road, where on the end of side A of Abbey Road, there is a, like, baked in, I think, 10 seconds of silence. And obviously, back in 1969, that would be a bit longer, because you would have to go up to your record player, lift the needle, flip it over, and then start again, and then you have Here Comes the Sun. We don't have that, because it's digital, but there is a way of having that by producing the song just slightly differently, by just putting in some, like, a little bit of space at the end. And at least in, like, Ableton, off of the top of my head, I've managed to do that all the time, because that's just a way of how I mix my albums, where I have, like, a fade out, and then you have basically, like, the tail of the song that you can then hear on the next part of the song. I'll give an example right now. This is off of a thing that I'm still working on that I haven't released yet, but yeah, here's an example of how I do that. I'll mark how it's cut. And then another thing that I've also been doing, and this is, I think, why this is really on the top of my head, is this is something that I've also done several times when it comes to ending even my own albums, where, again, I could point to the unreleased album, but I'll point to my first one. So here you go. Yeah. And then here's the unreleased one. There you go. It's something I think matters, but I think because of that, it really is just a preference thing. Anyway, I think that just having a little bit of a pause at the end would be wonderful, psychologically speaking, for, like, taking in this album and then realizing, oh, it's over. Oh, this is the experience I've had. Let me think about this for a while before just jumping into the next song. But yeah, the whole album is very well made. It is, I think, just on a technical level, it really does demonstrate, like, beyond proficiency with this. I will say I haven't listened to any of Violet Pony's other stuff. This is the only thing I have heard from her. And just based off of this album, this is pretty fucking good. This is pretty fucking good for being made by one person as well. Keep that in mind. I don't, like, this isn't something that I think has, like, a publisher backing her. I don't think, I think this is entirely independent. But yeah, with all that said, I've now talked about the album. I've now made a video on it. And, yeah, this is an album that I think is going to stick with me for a while. If only because of how it pretty much matched my taste in music somehow. And I was not expecting that at all from this. But even beyond that, just listening to the album on its own, never mind then, like, my own weird taste in music. There is so much that is done with this album that is done so well, and it sounds so good. And because of all of that, it is worth listening to. It is worth enjoying and giving multiple listens. And I think that people, if you're discovering this album through me, even though I know my audience is really fucking tiny, if you're discovering this album through me, I have a funny feeling that there's probably some people in my audience that are going to like this album as well. So that's the other reason why I wanted to go ahead and talk about this album. Alright. So, that's it. Follow me on Blue Sky at absoluteproblem.com. I'm still going to be promoting this for a little while. And subscribe to the channels. I'm out.